Yo, what's happening? How you all doing? As you all know, your favorite person. I hope the sun is shining wherever you are. If it's not shining on the outside, I hope that it's most certainly shining on the inside. Today is just another great day in the neighborhood. Every day above ground is a great day. So we just want to make sure we take advantage of it. And before we even jump into this, just make sure y'all understand that the focus is not on perfection. It's just on progress as we live and grow and try to be better humans to ourselves and to our community to create environmental change. Now, the moment you've all been waiting for. You all know I don't mess around. Only the best of the best rock out here with Stan. So I have an amazing guest, amazing person, speaker, author, amazing human, and just amazing person. I'm really excited to have this conversation about sexual assault prevention and beyond. Wherever you are, clap your hands, stomp your feet. Jamie, Devin. Round of applause. That's what's happening right now. Round of applause. Anyway, Jamie, how you doing right now?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. So great.
Awesome.
Thank you very much. So great to have you. As we were saying earlier before the show, great to see you. It's been just so long. It's been so odd. How's everything been in this quarantine world for you?
Oh, I mean, like everyone else, I feel like it's been a lot of great opportunity and it's been a lot of, hardships. But overall, I've been just really trying to take advantage of the extra time and then also take advantage of really some self-care, just because I'm sure like everyone in the world right now, it's been a hard year just to be isolated and behind screens. I know the two of us got to hang out virtually last May, and I can't believe it's been over a year, almost a year, since I
Yeah.
last saw you. So, yeah, how have you been in quarantine?
Pretty good. Same, just adapting. It's forced evolution. If you're smart, if you begin
Yeah.
to get it, it's like, let me pay attention. Let me try and grow during these times. And you mentioned self-care. So I ask you today, on a scale from 1 to 10, how are you feeling? 1 being, I wish I could go back in time and redo life, at least the last 24 hours. 10 being, I'm amazing. How are you feeling?
I think I'm at about a 7 or 8. I mean, life is pretty good right now. I am so excited to be here with you. I have a really awesome full-time job being a professional, a student affairs professional overseeing fraternity and sorority life at the University of New Hampshire. And I've just released there's a lot of feedback, a co-author as a book for a book, which is called From Letters to Leaders, and I'm the book author for chapter 5. And there's just been so much going on. So I'm pretty good right now.
Okay, that's awesome. All right, we're 7, 8. We're gonna try to take it to at least an 8.5. I just hold myself to a high esteem. So that's what the plan is, at least. So you mentioned your book, and I want to talk about that right now. Let's dive right into it. So for the book, you're responsible for chapter 5, and the chapter title is Unfrozen.
Yeah.
So what inspired you to be a part of this book, From Letters to Leaders, which is, amazing. But beyond that, what inspired, your chapter 5 in providing that content for the subject matter?
Awesome. So Unfrozen is my signature keynote program. And so I decided to take that keynote and put it on paper pretty much. But what really inspired it was the fact that there is so much bystander intervention theory out there. And ultimately, I wanted to inspire college students, high school students, people who work with college students to understand that bystander intervention and active bystander intervention, it takes a village. And it takes people to be truly comfortable in being able to intervene. And so Unfrozen is actually an acronym.
Okay.
And so each letter stands for something, and each letter kind of gives a toolkit for a college student or a professional staff member that's looking to educate their students on sexual assault prevention and bystander intervention. But really, at the end of the day, the story is about me. I'm not sure if you've been able to read the chapter yet, but it is a pretty heartfelt, deep, deep story from my past as a sexual assault survivor. And so it's really me being able to inspire other survivors to feel comfortable sharing their story so that they understand the power of their voice and their presence in the space of sexual assault prevention.
Okay, so before we move forward, I want to make sure, folks, this is, don't go anywhere right now, but write down, remember down, From Letters to Leaders. You can find that on Amazon. Okay, there'll be some notes for sure in the comments as well. So I'll make sure that to put that in there again, From Letters to Leaders. And that's where you'll find it on Amazon as well. And beyond that, oh, I like that. Ready. But From Letters to Leaders. And mine is actually on the way, legit. That's on the
Awesome.
way, legit.
Good.
So you mentioned being comfortable sharing your story. And I think that is something that people, sometimes have not been able to do or don't feel empowered to do. And if you wouldn't mind sharing, what helped you decide that, hey, someone needs to hear this. This is my story, and I want, whatever that feeling was, what inspired you to help get past that?
So, to be honest, I'm not sure how many sexual assault survivors you talk to or that are in your life, but we know that 1 in 4 women, 1 in 12 men are survivors of some sort of sexual assault. And essentially, it took me a really long time. What people will find out about me is that it took me 12 years to get the true help that I needed and to work on myself. So, what I actually wound up doing was therapy, which is eye movement therapy. And I got a therapist and I worked for about 6 to 10 months, kind of rehashing my story in my brain so that I wouldn't be as triggered every single time somebody shared their story with me. I work with college students, and a lot of the women are really close with me and they sometimes divulge information. And I was starting to get panic attacks 2 or 3 years ago when I first started in this role. And so I reached out to a therapist. I started the therapy. And I mean, it took about 2 full years of, therapy and understanding that it wasn't my fault, and understanding that I have a lot of tools, a lot of education that maybe I can do. At the end of the day, like, it's really not about me, right? To be able to share my story, I am able to hopefully help somebody else. And so I just got to this place where I genuinely was able to share my story without crying and feeling like it was happening to me in that moment. Um, and so ultimately, it got to me to this place where I said, I got to write a book. And actually, about a year and a half ago, I was going to write my own book. And I'm so grateful that I had this opportunity to be a chapter writer, because it kind of got my foot in the door a little bit, and to be able to share this piece of my life. But ultimately, it takes a lot of work. People who deal with trauma, that are watching, that read the story, it's really important that they understand that just because I did the work and I feel really comfortable now being outspoken about it, it doesn't mean that I don't need to continue to do the work and continue to, use different techniques to make sure that I'm okay and that I'm taking care of myself.
Number one, thank you for sharing all of that
Yeah, of course.
and the transparency. And beyond that, the piece about taking care of yourself. I think some people aren't aware that when they take on, let's say, even other stories, the word, from what I understand, vicarious trauma,
Yeah.
and what that creates, and even everyday news that people might receive can do something to one.
Yeah.
Beyond that, if you wouldn't mind, because in the past I've gotten in some trouble using the word trigger
Yeah.
and how people respond to that. So if you wouldn't mind, for those watching who've never, let's say, heard the word trigger, may have a misunderstanding about what it means, ultimately, for you, in the simplest form, how would you describe that word? What is that, when you hear that word,
Yeah.
like, what does it mean for you, and how can folks work through that word?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I think the word honestly is something new. Like I'm older than the students that I work with, and sometimes I'm actually a little taken aback when everything is a trigger. But I like to break it down as it's just something that is emotionally or mentally affecting you, and so it doesn't have to be something that is right on the forefront of your brain. I think it's something that maybe happened to you in the past, or like you said, vicarious trauma, right? Maybe your spouse or your partner is dealing with something and somebody says something to you, and you have this moment of it could be a response that's physical in the body, it could be emotional. For me, I dealt with my trauma for 10, I share this as it was about 12 years before I finished going through EMDR therapy. And when I started being triggered by things people were saying, I realized I never did the work, right? Like I pushed it down. I very much unhealthily, worked through my trauma without really confronting it. And so for me, that word trigger really is something different for everyone. But for me, it was manifesting physically. So I was having panic attacks. I was, I wanted to be there for my students or people that were coming to me. And I found that I've just hit a point where I was pushing that trauma down so deep that it was starting to come out physically in my body. And so I think a trigger is different for everyone, but it's really important for each person to acknowledge the physical or mental signs so that they can use different coping strategies or different therapies on their own.
Thank you so very much for sharing that as well. Now we talk about sexual assault prevention, and there are folks out there who, let's say, want to be a resource. They want to be helpful. They want to be a support system. If you wouldn't mind, is there two or three things you could mention in which people can be more helpful? They can be there for someone, or be an ear as a resource.
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of ways that you can be an ally to a survivor. I think the number one is to actively listen, really making sure that when somebody chooses to share with you, uh, if somebody chooses to disclose information, it's really important to just be able to listen and not try to put somebody in a box of what they should or shouldn't do. There are some survivors that might not want to tell anybody else. You might be the only person that they're sharing this with, and so it's important to listen to what they want and what they need, by asking the question, how can I help you, and just listening. I think the second piece is understanding what it means to be an empathetic person and understanding the differences between emotional and cognitive empathy, and making sure that you're utilizing your empathy in a way where the person can really feel that. So if that means taking action, that means calling 911, if that means going to find resources on your campus or in your community, those are all ways that could be helpful. And then the last piece in helping a survivor is really making sure that you yourself are in a place to receive that information, which I think a lot of people don't choose to think about, but every single one of us holds our own trauma or our experiences. And so making sure before somebody says anything to you or discloses information that you yourself are in a space to be able to hold that information and help that person through their next steps. Oh,
Oh,
okay.
sorry. My apologies.
I know I
My
couldn't
apologies.
hear, but I
Yeah,
think I
sorry.
got it. I
I'm
think I
back.
got
No. It's rookie mistake on my end.
it.
What do you think? Thank you to our listeners as well for reminding me. Hello, I was typing before, and I was like, I don't want anyone hear me clicking away, feel like I'm not paying attention. So I muted myself as I was listening. So thank you all very much on this end. So as what do you think the best part for you has been with your featured program, Unfrozen?
Yeah.
As well as being part of Chapter 5, what do you feel like? It's like, yes, this is this is how, or I vibe with this. I'm glad that I did this. What's been the best part about having a featured program and being a part of Chapter 5?
I mean, I think the best part is the impact that I'm making. It's crazy to think about. I mean, I'm hoping that every single student reads this book, whether they're an incoming student into college or a student leader, but specifically the impact of being able to not just share my story, but provide those resources. So, in the book and in the program, I talk about bystander intervention theory, Unfrozen. I talk about consent culture, which is a huge piece in understanding sexual assault prevention, because in order to prevent sexual assault, we need people to stop doing it. And a big piece of that is understanding healthy relationships and understanding consent culture. So, really, for me, it's the impact that I'm able to make in students' lives. And honestly, I've been working with some professionals too to be able to translate my story differently on their college campuses. So helping not just use the resources on their campus or these templated programs that I'm sure you've seen. You go into college campuses all across the country too. A lot of the times it's like step and repeat, and it's not very personal. So being able to tailor not just my story, but the programming to each campus, understanding that, every survivor is going to receive the information differently. Every person that wants to help is going to receive the information differently. And so being able to pick and choose how people can truly help end sexual violence on their campus and in their community is so impactful and important to me.
Thank you. Thank you. You mentioned something I've not, maybe I've heard it in different ways, but I've never heard consent culture.
Yeah.
Would you mind diving in a little bit? Let's share
Yeah.
that, especially on as it pertains to obviously college campuses, but as we just kind of move along and raising
Yeah.
human beings and adults, let's talk to me a little bit more about consent culture.
Okay, so I think consent culture is the action piece to sexual assault prevention. So people, they share about how do we support survivors, how do we intervene in sexual assaults, but we sometimes forget that we need to create a safe, caring culture wherever we are, right? So, like you just said, it doesn't have to be on a college campus, but if we're in a friend community or a friendship, we need to be able to lay out boundaries and understand what a healthy relationship means. And so,
Mm.
helping people, consent culture is really at the downright nitty gritty. It's being able to have a conversation with the people in your life about what does consent look like? What do I feel comfortable with? In the book, I talk about putting earrings on, whether you're a man, non binary, a female. I feel like everyone's put on a piece of jewelry before. And I talk about how sometimes you want to wear a pair of studs, and other times you want a pair of hoops, and other times you want to wear a necklace and no earrings. But the important piece there is that you pick and choose what you want. And that's what consent culture is. It's creating an environment where everyone in that community understands how to ask the questions that sometimes are perceived as uncool or weird to say, like, how do you want to have sex, or what do you want to do tonight? It's really about how to have those conversations and kind of taking that next step and saying, it doesn't have to be the same thing every single time. And so helping people understand that you might want to be in a relationship with somebody sexually 1 minute and not the next minute. And you're allowed to say no, and you're allowed to make decisions in that moment, and creating that culture around the environment that you're in.
Wow. So for young folks, what have been some of their, let's say, best takeaways that you feel like they've had some aha moments? What have been some of those moments they've shared with you, like, I didn't think about, or thanks for sharing that? What have been a few of
Yeah.
those things?
Okay, well, the first one, which is super awesome, is, when you break down Unfrozen, the O in Unfrozen is orient. And I talk about orienting yourself to the situation, whether you're a bystander or whether you are a you're experiencing sexual assault or rape. Orienting yourself and understanding how to see, hear, smell, touch, and using your senses to know where you really are. Because no matter if you are that bystander or that ally, the friend, or you're the person, being sexually assaulted, you are able to remember a lot more. And I think when people talk about sexual assault, a lot of, or the students or the people that come to me after reading the book or the program, a lot of them say to me, oh my gosh, I never even thought of the piece that a lot of survivors say they forgot. And that's a normal experience. And we need to make sure that people understand that trauma, it likes to live and just like go away, and your brain tries to block it out. And that's very normal. But to be able to say to a student, you can utilize these senses and you can orient yourself. So that's been really cool to hear, good feedback about. The other piece is honestly the consent culture piece. So I'm glad you
Mm.
asked about that. It's that a lot of students talk about how to prevent sexual assault, how to be an active bystander and a good friend. Uh, but when you hear them say, well, how do I actually implement a consent culture? It's hearing the stories of what they're doing on their campuses or in their communities to create that environment. So not just having, a speaker come in and that being a one and done, but it's bringing that speaker in or reading the book and then investing time and energy to have small conversations about what their community looks like and what those healthy relationships look like. And then the last thing is that empathy piece. So a lot of people, I don't think, learn a lot about how to respond to a disclosure. And a lot of people are taught, oh, here are your resources in your community. Here is the person you can call. Here's 911. Here's the therapist. And it's a lot of pointing and putting people in different directions. But when you give people the tools to be a good human and a good friend and listen and respond with empathy, I think a lot of people resonate with that.
Like, I'm not gonna mute myself. I'm gonna say, give people. That's what I'm typing, you all. If you either click, give people the tools to be good humans. I want to make sure that I send that out into the ether as well. Give people the tools to be good humans. And I'm going to ask a question also from a male perspective. What are things, what's something that men, from, again, speaking from my skin, who I am or identify as well as other folks who do from where I stand, what are some things that men can do that to help with consent culture and not just prevent, but promote healthy culture and
Yeah.
environmental shift?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I wish more people asked it. To be honest, I think it's men understanding their power and privilege in situations and just being okay with saying, hey, buddy, this is not okay. And being actively aware of the power of their voices and what they can
Mm,
do to intervene. Because a lot of the time, at least what I'm seeing, is women are putting it, and non binary people, right? But primarily women are putting it on themselves to figure out, how do we be active bystanders that are healthy? How can we intervene? How can we create a consent culture? How can we share our stories? Uh, but they very rarely bring men into the conversation to say, we need you on our team. And so that's a really good question. I think the first place to start is for men to be willing to have some hard, tough conversations and actively recognize that while men in general, right, or it's not every man is a problem, but the majority of victims and survivors of sexual violence are women. And understanding that at its core and being able as a male ally to say, what can I do? How can I help? And how can I intervene safely, right? Because especially in situations where I'll use an example, I oversee fraternity and sorority life,
Sure.
and watching, a fraternity man intervene in a situation, even if it was something that both parties consented to, is so empowering. Being able to just say, I'm not okay with this. I don't think this was supposed to happen, even if it was, but being able to say, this is not the right time and a place, and actively using their voice and their power to intervene in a situation sometimes could be so impactful for the other men to see. And it's a lot of that, brotherhood type of mentality.
For sure. And using, it's one of those things in regards, everyone has, let's say, superpowers for
Yeah,
sure. And it's like, using said superpower, for lack of better words,
yeah,
for good.
hmm,
And I'm thinking, I'm saying this not, certainly not as an excuse, but to recognize, I want to say use the word recognize.
yeah,
For men, let's say, again, for lack of better words, I'm full of those. I'm full of lack of better words right now. But let's say the cave what I say to myself as I'm learning, like the caveman in me,
yeah,
whatever that means, from let's say from again a caveman standpoint, what we're supposed to be, that the scripts that we live in our life, that how we move, and sometimes maybe can be jaded by, or you're living in your own skin, so you're not reminded of a booming voice or stature or being around and being able to have an impact, a
yeah,
positive impact on a situation that's making someone else uncomfortable.
yeah,
Uh, and also for guys listening, if I may, like going back to those three things is something that I feel like we're all works in progress. And even conversations I have with my wife around, the subject matter is okay, being willing to listen. All right. What does that look like? What does that feel like? Or, okay. What was then being an empathetic listener?
yeah,
And with that, what it feels like is not, it's not about you at that point. And
yeah,
by you, I mean me, right? Men.
yeah,
And then number three is being an empathetic listener and being open to receiving it. That's huge.
hmm,
Cavemen, if you're any cavemen out there or self-identifying cavemen at some point in your life from time to time, whatever situation arises. But I think the awareness is really powerful. So
yeah,
I'm really glad that is also a way that you're presenting things, because it's I guess as an amazing speaker as you are, part of it is being able to put things in a way where folks can digest it
yeah.
and,
Agreed.
and be open to it. Now I'm going to ask you, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you to brag on yourself. I do that on here. I'm going to do that on here, especially those who are not very braggadocious at all. But you're an amazing person, and I'm saying it. But you're very welcome. What I want you to let people know is what makes, not just your feature program, but obviously Unfrozen, what makes you amazing at what you do? I know this already, but there's also people who are watching this that may be in need of your services, obviously for their companies, certainly their campuses, and they want to create more of a consent culture. They want there to be an environmental shift. So
Yeah.
what makes you and so what makes it amazing? Spare no expense, because if you do, I'm going to help you. So feel free to let her rip. Have my permission, okay, to let her rip and let her know what makes it so amazing.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think I'm so amazing at this topic because I share it from a survivor's perspective. I also feel like I'm genuinely unauthentically me. So when I speak, I don't speak like a robot or something that seems scripted. A lot of people share with me that I am the person that seems like I'm having a couch conversation with them, and I can get real and nitty gritty, and we can get to the real topics that matter, that are important to them. I also feel like I have been doing fraternity and sorority, student organization, all of this stuff for a really long time. So I'm able to not just empathize with what most of my audience are going through, but also to be able to share that experience with them. And ultimately, I feel like I'm a really empowering and impactful person. And I also genuinely really care about others, which sometimes it's to my fault. But I think being able to do this for a living, it's really wonderful to be able to not just share my story, but meet people and engage with them and come up with systems and plans that truly systemically shake and create an environment that is a culture of care and a consent culture.
Thank you so very much for sharing all of that unapologetically. That's what we need. I'm like, listen, awesome people got to say so. We got to put the world on notice that awesome people are out there doing amazing work and helping us live in a world, in a country that we say we want to live in. And I absolutely appreciate you doing that. If you wouldn't mind, before getting out of here, I see that you're obviously here on your Instagram is on the ticker at Jamie Devin. Outside of that, please let folks know how they can learn more about you, how they can find you, how they can connect with you.
Awesome. So yes, my Instagram's at Jamie Devin. Facebook is at Jamie Devin Wilson. My website is www.jamiedevinwilson.com. And you can also find my programs and services at www.greekuniversity.org/Jamie.
Absolutely love it. Thank you so very much. Any final words? Any final words for you as we close this interview? Anything you'd like to share? Final words?
No, but thank you so much for having me, and for everyone watching, thanks for joining on this chat a little bit about sexual assault and rape prevention. And just so everyone knows, April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So if you have the time and the energy to invest in some small educational learning with you and your communities, I think it's really important to understand what a good majority of people go through, whether it's trauma from sexual assault and rape prevention or a different type of trauma. But it's really important to take the time this month and every month to educate yourselves.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jamie. Absolutely appreciate you being here. For those of you all here, remember, we're steadily here wanting to make progress, to live in a space, a place where we can all feel welcome, comfortable, and able to be the best versions of ourselves with the tools to be good people that we're capable and that we know we can be from the neck up, from the inside out. Remember, as we move forward, that you don't have to be perfect. Just make sure you're working on making some progress, because effort on fire beats knowledge on ice. And this certainly helped, as we kind of develop better mindsets around different situations, circumstances in which we want to grow and keep all of us safe from all our experiences and what we continue to go through today. So remember, be willing to listen, be an empathetic listener, and be open to stories and understanding what's going on in the life of not just you, but others as well, and watch where we can go to create a complete environmental change and shift for all of us. So thank you very much for being here. Jamie, hold on one second. I appreciate you all for being here, and I look forward to seeing you on the next go around. This is Stan Pierce, the second. You heard it here first. Peace.